All right, so I'm here with Bill Dallas, bro. That was excellent. So you were just a part of a panel, and we were just talking about it. What a dynamic group, and just all the information. I mean, here, it just happened. So what did you take from it? I guess here, what's your opinion? Say something about it.
Well, I think the biggest thing that you pull from it is how impressive each person is. Like, I don't get an opportunity too many times to actually sit and talk with people like we did at my home last night. We got a chance to spend time with a bunch of speakers, right?
So cool.
And I think what I learned from the group here is how unique each person was, and their view of the world.
Right.
And yet there is a common thread.
I mean, it was incredible. You guys are saying the same things. It's just from different perspectives and with a different flavor.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So talk about the speakers dinner, and that's something I want to talk about. I have been looking forward to that speakers dinner for whenever it was that we set it up. I mean, what an incredible, just the ambiance. Your house is just so cool. Talk about it. What was it like for you?
Well, I think for my wife just had a hip replacement, so I sort of am in the doghouse but I scheduled this like a year ago, and we've worked with all of everybody here to try to create something that made it more intimate. And I actually think it was one of the greatest things that we thought about how to bring a bunch of speakers who travel all over the place to come to an event, to get together, to know each other a little bit, which makes it a little bit more special.
And like, look, I've been to speakers dinners where it's in a small room at a restaurant.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Right. It's loud. I mean, we got the chance to actually connect and actually hang out, and I mean, hopefully we get the chance to do it next year.
Great.
So you talked about, look, everybody up here, we're all the same as you. We're not special. We're not like extra talented, but I think the differentiator that you were making a point on is grit. And talk about that, because I think the modern originator, the 2024 originator, I think that's something that if they just had a couple extra scoops of that, I think it would change the game. So first off, what's the problem with it? Where are people missing? And how do people get grit?
I think you get grit by a little bit what Casey and what people were talking about. I mean, hard work. And grit comes, for me, it came in getting my head bashed in almost every day in my business, right? And
that's an originator.
And getting back up.
Yeah.
And just saying, it doesn't really matter what the market is. It doesn't matter. I don't have any more talent than anybody else.
Right.
But I do have passion for what I do.
Right.
And I have perseverance. And what I loved about Angela, I mean, one of the books. So I'll give you a quick story.
Okay, give it to me. This is great.
Because I kept saying that one of the things I've always said is I love being in the business, but I want somebody to come up to me and say, "Are you Bobby Joe Dallas's dad?"
Yeah.
Instead of, "Are you Bill Dallas?" Right? And blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it's happening. But one of the things that I did with my daughter was she is one of 4 brothers, and Bobby Joe. So I asked Bobby Joe when she was going to apply to college, really, what are you going to write the paper on?
Right.
And she thought about it a little bit, and she says, duck or bleed, which is sort of the daughter's way of dealing with a lot of testosterone and 4 or 5 brothers.
And brother, yeah.
She's not going to get anything in a volleyball game. She's not going to get any love in a wiffle ball game.
Right.
And when we started writing it, right, duck or bleed, which is pretty funny because you're going to give this to a college entrance person. We started looking at Angela's book, and grit. And grit is what she has.
Wow.
Grit is, I think, the thing that differentiates successful people from unsuccessful people.
I can personally attest to it. And having over 100 podcast episodes with some of the greatest in the industry, they all have a story of just what you described, getting their head kicked in, and then worse than that, terrible luck, terrible things happening, but they still went to work the next day, and I think that that's exactly what people need to do right now in 2024. Look, we got our heads bashed in for the past basically 2 years. We've been losing. If you're still in the game, I think that says you have the grit, at least a little bit, but now it's time to double down and really just capture that market share. And I want to talk about opportunity. So you mentioned investors. I've not heard one person like say, hey, go after investors. What's your plan on it? What's your take?
So what happened in 2022 was that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac basically said, we don't really want to buy investor loans. Well, as you know, with the single family residence really changing with COVID, we're not going to work. We are working from home. We are using our home as a home office. And we are rethinking, we're renting it, we're doing all these things with the residents. Well, think about solving, so one of the things that we saw was this big movement of investors buying single family homes. Well, why are not mortgage people more focused on investors?
They're not. They really aren't. It's literally the last thing on the list.
And the reason they aren't most of the time is because Fannie, their major funding source, doesn't like it.
Right.
And the same, so that if you think about the two things that are really growing, one is investors, and the second is cash out. People need cash out because they got more tappable equity than they know what to do with. So why are we not focused on that as a recruiting, as a product? And so I've spent really the last 3 or 4 years trying to figure out products and services and things that help people get equity out or find investors. And the biggest thing that if we dedicated ourselves to trying to understand, okay, who owns all this investor property? Only 25% of property, single-family residents are owned by,
BlackRock,
Blackstone,
Vanguard,
Black this,
and
and so the rest is individually owned.
Right.
So how do you find that information? Well, we go search each MSA, and I'll give you an example. In Sacramento, there are 12,000 people that own more than 3 single-family residents.
That's kind of a lot.
In Sacramento.
Yeah, wow.
So pick them. So how do you go after them? You find out who they are, and we're attacking them with what we call ADUs, which are these auxiliary dwelling units, because there's nothing better than an investor who makes rental income from property to want to figure out how they could put another piece of property.
Add another unit, another door.
And that's what Gino was talking about what his father told him, which is don't buy another unit until you've maximized the rent and everything from the unit you own.
Right.
Which is really pretty good strategy.
I mean, I'm even thinking about doing that.
Me too.
At my house, I've elderly parents, and I'd want them to be close. I'm looking at it like that, and also too, I would like to rent it. It's a great strategy. What is Dallas Capital?
So Dallas Capital is first a family office I'd sold my business the first time in 1994. Gosh, that was a long freaking time ago. So then I bought it back, and I sold it again in 96. And so it became
that's insane.
It became a my wealth vehicle that we wanted to manage. But what Dallas Capital, the reason I wanted to manage it, or my wife and I and family, was that we wanted to make a difference in communities. And we can do that in lots of ways. And so we've spent our life really trying to figure out whether it's friends, family, faith. We spend time helping, providing loans and things to people.
Right.
We try to make the properties in our communities better. My wife's somewhat of a contractor, even though she's laid up with the bad hip.
I mean, she had a crutch.
No,
but she was just crushing
but she
it
built.
too, by the way.
So I think overall, it's trying to make a difference and use wealth as a way to do it, but actually do it right personally. Don't leave it.
Yeah, just somebody else.
Don't give it to somebody
else. Don't give it to
else
some charity,
do it.
and hopefully it works.
And I'm in the community. I love our personal relationship. Right. I want that to be the legacy of Dallas Capital, and I want my kids to be able to see it and be a part of it. And so it's a unique
legacy
sort of way. When I was 40, I had wealth.
Yeah.
And so somebody came up to me and said, they used a sports analogy, and it was like, you've done. It was actually my pastor, if I can be. So he said, he basically drew on a sheet of paper. He says, I'm going to solve this for you. I go, your first half of your life is success. The second half has to be significance. And so he drew the cross, and he said, your first half is on this axis, and this is your second half.
Wow.
Good luck.
Wow, that's
and
all he
go,
said.
and go make a difference.
Wow.
And he says you will. And I think a lot of that is just how we are as people, but it is a big deal, right?
Powerful.
As you try to make a difference in people's lives.
Powerful. All right, Bill Dallas,
Dude.
everyone.
It's awesome.
Dude, that was
Thank you,
great.
man. Thank you.
Loved it.
Garrity rules.
Dude, he